All right, so today I'd like to practice or review, clarify um, upper extremity muscle questions that we've kind of been avoiding by doing so many photo questions. Because remember, on the test, you'll have questions that are just verbally, how would you stretch this or what position? So I want to make sure that we do some of that too. Okay. So let's make sure we have access to, if we need it, our wrists, our elbow, our radial elbow joint, our shoulder, our scapula. And then I'm just going to ask some different types of questions that you might see on the test. So remember, this is about learning not just the answer for that question, learning how we get the answer for that question, so that way you can apply that to any question I happen to ask. To me, it's a lot easier to memorize just a few concepts that you can apply thousands of different ways than trying to memorize 1,000 different questions. Okay. All right. What position would I need to put the wrist if I wanted to stretch the palmaris longus? If that's, you're fine. If I would have been bothered, I wouldn't have left the door open. You're good. Okay. Question number one: what position would I want to put the wrist if I want to stretch the palmaris longus? Give you 10 seconds. I want to try to do a lot of these. All right, what's my answer? Extend it, yeah. I want to extend the wrist to stretch a flexor. Okay, so I mentioned this to 310. I emphasize that the reason we keep bringing muscles back to direction of pull is because it's like it translates it into a language that should make sense. I'm going to stretch a flexor by extending. That should make sense. But if you didn't know what the palmaris longus did based off of how it pulls, it may not make sense. The palmaris longus is a flexor, so therefore it makes sense that I need to extend. Okay. Next question. Give me the two functions of the extensor carpi ulnaris. Two functions of the extensor carpi ulnaris. As many times as you need. Two functions of the extensor carpi ulnaris. You're good. This isn't the intent of this class, but this is where you could by now say, well, on the test, he's going to give me 4 or more different functions, just to make sure I have the right one. So if you go right to the answer choices, I can see how that can be super confusing. So answer it like it would be a fill in the blank. Like answer it based off of your circles, your list, or your memory, and then see which answer choice fits. To me, that's the best way to not get confused. Extensor carpi ulnaris. I love these muscles because they have function in one of the names, but the other part of the name infers function. So extensor, if you tell me it's a flexor, so it's a wrist extensor, and it's ulna side. So it's pulling ulna side, so it's an ulna deviation pull. Right? If I wanted, let's stay on that one muscle. If I wanted to stretch it, I'd want to flex. I'd want to radial deviate. If I wanted to do an isometric muscle test for it, I would want to supply an external force that's trying to flex me, and they resist it, and radial deviate me where they resist it. And then when you get really fancy in the kitchen that you're cooking in therapy, you could do a combinational resistance where you're trying to flex and radial deviate. Really isolate that muscle being an extensor ulna deviate. That's how it works. Does that make sense when you're doing these manual muscle tests, when you're working, when you're practicing? To know what external force to go against it, you have to know what direction it pulls, its function. So if it's an extensor or a puller, you need to provide a flexion radial force. All right, how about a tricky verbiage question? And I'll repeat it as many times as I need. When I say function, that specifically means how does it pull, right? The direction of motion, it pulls. As a reminder, before I ask the question, the reason I don't say action is for the same reason a lot of biomechanists don't say action, because action infers motion. And we know muscles can work isometrically, there's no motion. And action also hurts because we think motion in the same direction. So function, how does it pull? How does it pull? How does it pull? If I gave you the following information, and Grace, feel free if to do our little process that you got. I say our, it's yours, it's you guys. I don't say this very well. That's why I have ringers. That's why I have help keep me the train on the track. Palmaris longus, when working eccentrically, I'm going to ask two questions, and I think this will really help our understanding if we understand the material. Palmaris longus is working, giving it to you. And it's working eccentrically. I'm giving it to you. I don't have to show you. It's being lengthened while it's still pulling above rest. Two questions. What motion must be happening if the palmaris longus is working eccentrically? And what function does the palmaris longus have? What group is it in? And I'm specifically giving you that question because a lot of students flip-flop. Well, if there's extension, it must be, right? Palmaris longus is working through eccentric muscle contraction. What motion of the wrist must be happening is question number one. And what group or what function must the palmaris longus be is question number two. Take a minute. Y'all are like molecules spread out over a medium. I was going to say check with someone next to you, but I'm like, what next to you? I understand. I was the same. My motion have to be? If I gave you the first part, I don't have to show you. I gave you enough information, okay? Palmaris longus, working eccentrically. What motion must be happening? Extension. Must be happening. A flexor working eccentrically is going to extension, whether it's allowing it or slowing it down. This is where students, guys, I'm taking my time to try to help you not make a careless mistake. whoa, if the palmaris longus is working and there's extension, it must be an extensor. No, it's doing that while still pulling in a direction of flexion. It's still a flexor. Does that make sense? That's important. It doesn't switch function. In fact, that would go against everything I've been trying to teach you. Because now any muscle could be on any team. A bicep could be a tricep, and a tricep could be a bicep. No, there has to be some constancy to these teams. That's why we look at them on pull, because the pull is constant for most of them. Any questions or follow-up before I get to the next one? Okay. All right. Here's the next one. I might give you this was on, hey, Mr. Shane, this was on our first and second test where I'm giving you an exercise, but I don't do start finish. I just say, what would be happening during this specific motion? You remember those kind of questions? So let's do one of those. We're going to have an anterior posterior deltoid question. Okay. And then here is the movement for the range of motion. £85. This is a remote control and I'm still shaking. God. I would love for you to tell me anterior or posterior deltoid and contraction during the flexion phase of that exercise. So instead of assessing the motion with the start or finish or before or after, I'm telling you the motion that I want you to assess. Does that make sense? So I'm giving it to you. Hey, tell me what's happening during the flexion phase of this exercise. Anterior, posterior, concentric, eccentric. So you could practice writing answer choices. Anterior delt concentric, anterior delt eccentric, posterior delt concentric, posterior delt eccentric. That's what I'm going to do. Absolutely. Also, my brain works different. Every brain is special. It's just finding what works for you. I am not a process that I struggle with process. Grace doesn't struggle with process. Grace is very organized, and that's great. We can complement each other in this class as teachers and mentors. So in other words, if you want Grace to go through the process, like how she does external forces trying to do this, and the muscles would be this, just ask. And she could do the steps on the board. But we all learn different ways. We all have different processes. I just want right answers. On the test, it's your grade. It may help you, may not. Feel free. I just want to make sure you feel free and comfortable. If that means to step out into the back room to do it, that's fine. If that means to sit in the back corner so nobody sees you, that's fine. But this is one you could totally do on your own to try to figure out or feel or see if seeing it alone isn't helping you, you're free to move. Okay. Okay, I gave you shoulder flexion, so that should be a given, just like we were doing high school algebra. You write down your givens. He's giving me shoulder flexion. I know gravity's trying to flex me, so I wouldn't need flexion pullers. I could eliminate my anterior deltoid. I need my posterior deltoid. I know that. My posterior deltoid is an extension puller. So an extensor allowing the flexion can only happen eccentrically. Does that make sense? So we're practicing different ways I could ask the question. So that way you may understand the concepts for a certain type of question. I just want to make sure we practice all the different kind of questions. Working eccentrically to allow the flexion. Yeah. Because so we could I like to do process of elimination. I know it can't be the anterior because it would yank it down, right? So it has to be the posterior. The posterior is an extension puller. That makes sense. It's holding me up. It made me come up, but it's also going to let me go down. Same muscles. All right. How about this question? What would be the function group if the supinator, and I'm using that one on purpose because it's a tease, right? It's my favorite muscle in the body because of its name. If the supinator were working eccentrically, I don't have to show you how. I've given you enough information on how muscles work. If the supinator were working eccentrically, what motion must be happening? Must be. And what group or function is the supinator? The second question is me checking your understanding of not to put a muscle with a motion. That's all it is. That's the only part of the second question is to try to check ourselves to make sure we don't just put assign function based off of motion. Does everybody? I'm not trying to be tricky. I'm trying to test your understanding. Something I've said 100 times. And I've said it 100 times, not because y'all aren't good listeners. It's because that's how much our brains want to go to specific motion with specific muscle. Let me reemphasize the question. The supinator muscle is working through eccentric contraction. What motion must be happening and what function would the supinator be? Its pull, its direction of its agonistic pull. Anybody, and I'm just reiterating, does anybody need Grace to do any of the process stuff? Just ask. Grace, you wouldn't mind, huh? Okay. All right. What motion must be happening? Pronation. Does that make the supinator a pronation muscle? No. It's doing that while still pulling in a direction of supination. Now, again, an example of that we've done it several times. If the supinator is working eccentrically, I have to have pronation. But it's accomplishing this. Think of it like this. The gravity's trying to pronate. The supinator is working to allow slower pronation than what gravity is trying to do. It's still working. It's like the wind. If the wind was the agonist and you're running against the wind, you're not running as fast as you could. The wind is controlling how fast you're running. Not really, but I'm just trying to use an analogy. That just because the motion is happening in the direction of gravity doesn't mean that muscle is not working above rest. It's preventing you from going as fast as what gravity's offering. So on the test, I'm telling you guys, I play poker with my cards out. I'm telling you my hand. On the test, I'm going to ask this question. Time out. And somebody's going to tell me that the supinator is a pronator. Because they're going to say, well, there's pronation. The supinator is responsible for the pronation. Why is it not a pronator? I'm like, because it doesn't pull that way. That's the answer. It doesn't pull that way. How would I stretch both heads of the biceps brachii at the shoulder in the sagittal plane? That's your next question. What position or what motion would I want to move the shoulder in, put the shoulder in, to stretch both heads of the biceps brachii in the shoulder sagittal plane? Correct. So if we're having a shoulder conversation, both heads of the biceps brachii, shoulder sagittal plane. How would I want to put the shoulder? And y'all, I'm telling you, if I ask that question, one of those answers is going to be very tempting. I'm going to be like, not applicable, because the biceps doesn't function at the shoulder. It's going to be one of my answer choices. I know you guys know differently, but in other words, someone may say, well, wait, the bicep only does elbow stuff. I could see that happening. All right, guys, do I want to have my shoulder flexed or my shoulder extended? Outstanding. Absolutely. Extend that shoulder. And if I really want to stretch it, I want to make sure my elbow is not flexed, right? I want to make sure my elbow is extended and my shoulder is extended. That'll get her done. All right, how about this question? At any joint, give me every function of the biceps brachii long head. Everything it can possibly do. So count it just to make sure we're clear so that we don't overthink. The biceps short and long blend into one column. but the biceps long is still part of that team. So we wouldn't discount anything it does distally because it joined forces with another muscle. Okay, so tell me everything the biceps brachii does, whether as a solo artist or as part of a group, with the biceps brachii. With. Grace, did you have a process for stretching questions?
For stretching, just say like, okay, how does it feel to stretch it and just put it out?
So you wouldn't like write down like it pulls this way, so it's pretty straightforward. Got it. But you could do that. I'm going to give you another minute because I know you got to look at different circles or different lists or visualize different places. And then we'll practice how I can write answer choices for that question. Function at the shoulder. Shoulder flexor and abductor, right? Because it crosses anterolateral. So it has a flexion pull and an abduction pull. At the elbow, it's a flexor, good. And then at the radial ulna joint, it's a supinate. Does that make sense? Okay, next one. Are these helping? Okay, next one. Let's do this. We're going to write down these two answer choices. Infraspinatus, we're going to have to do a rotator cuff question. Infraspinatus and subscapularis, okay? It's going to be between those two, and then add eccentric, concentric as a secondary option. Okay, so here's the motions. Let's do two questions since I'm down here. I couldn't say start finish, right? But we're practicing different ways I could ask the question. If I don't do a start finish, but I show you the motions that are involved in that whole repetition, the movements, I might say, okay, guys, what's happening during the internal rotation phase? I'm going to give you the motion. I'm not asking you to assess it, I'm giving it to you. Or on the test, I might say what's happening during the external rotation phase of that exercise. Does that make sense? So let's practice two separate questions. You already have the answer choices for both. Subscat, infraspinatus, concentric, eccentric. And then what's happening during the external rotation phase? And as a separate question, what's happening during the internal rotation phase? So your answer choices are going to be the same for both. But for the sake of practicing, let's do both the internal and the external rotation phases. Any questions about what I'm asking? We're clear? Okay. Clear as Delkin Canal water. All right, guys, I'm gonna make y'all uncomfortable. Tracy, let's get you guys together. Like if you're in here, I'm gonna try to talk about it. It's just front group, you four, let's get together. Talk about it. You guys, let's get together. Talk about it. Yes, sir. Yeah, get together. Talk about you. And in addition to talking about it, you can share how you got to that answer. How do you know? If you're in kinesiology court, you had to prove your answer right. You're going to be in grad school when someone's going to say, how do you know that? You're going to have to say, well, this is how I know. Right. Stay in your groups. The internal rotation part, infraspinatus through eccentrics. I'm gonna pause it just to make, in case there's a follow-up. Okay? In case there's a follow-up. We're good? The external rotation part, same muscle, concentrics. Here's a question for your small group. I'll give you a minute. Where specifically would my plyometric sequence be of that muscle when my hand was at its lowest point or at its highest point? Discuss. During those oscillations of movement, where would my infraspinatus slow down motion through eccentrics, change my direction, and speed up motion through concentrics? Would it be when my hand was at its highest or when my hand was at its lowest? That guy's highest point or lowest point? Lowest. Gravity can change my direction up here by itself. I need my muscles to change my direction down here. Make sense? Okay. All right, stay in groups. Here's a trick from 310. It should be a refresher. Start. Here are your muscles, latissimus dorsi and deltoid. Okay? Latissimus dorsi, deltoid, concentric, eccentric. So there's your four choices. Two questions. Question number one, speeding up the adduction. Question number two, before my hand hit my side, slow down the adduction. I put on the brake. I use muscles to put on the brake. So question number one, speeding up the adduction. Question number two, slowing down the adduction. Your options are latissimus dorsi and deltoid. Identify the agonist and the contraction. Go for it. We're good. Guys, we're good? We're good? All right. Gravity can speed up my adduction, but it happened faster than what gravity can offer, right? So if I just let gravity do it by itself, you saw it go faster. If I use my deltoid eccentrically, it would go even slower than that, right? So I could eliminate deltoid. If my deltoid, Betty butter, bought some butter, but she said this butter's bitter. If my deltoid worked concentrically, I'd have done. If my deltoid worked eccentrically, I'd go slower than gravity. I'm trying to show you how we can eliminate deltoid here. And the deltoid can't push me down. So deltoid's out. The lat from here can only work eccentrically if something was trying to bring me up, or if I was slowing it down while it went up. That's not what happened. So the lat working concentrically was really my only option. Logical elimination, as Stacy and Magby used to say 10 years ago. We can eliminate, we can see who it must be because we can eliminate all the other options. So lat concentric would help me have fast adduction, faster than gravity. The same muscle that yanked me down can't push me to a stop. So when it came time to put on the brake, I got to turn this switch off and turn this switch on. My deltoid working eccentrically is going to slow down my adduction. If you did, and this is what's cool about thought experiments. If you did this experiment and you did 300 of these, bring it up slow, yank it down, and stop it, you would not be sore in your lats. Your delts would be sore as heck. Braking muscles, the eccentrics, putting on the brake, being pulled apart. That's where the rope phrase. It's when it's being pulled apart. Macro or micro. So even though all this motion was violent, where you would be sore is the brake part, the eccentrics. Was today helpful getting into small groups and talking it out? Good. All right, guys, I'll email you guys the plan for Monday. There is a couple more little things I got to lecture about, but I'll email you guys, and y'all have a good weekend.